A woman with no past. They told me my name before they told me anything else. As if that alone was supposed to anchor me. My name. Soft. Familiar. And completely empty. I remember waking up to white ceilings and the steady hum of machines. The smell of disinfectant. The sound of someone crying nearby, not loudly, just enough to feel heavy. A nurse leaned over me and smiled. Welcome to Brinicle Reads. I share new life stories here every day, so if you enjoy these journeys, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Now, let's jump back into today's story. I think you're really going to love where this one goes if you stay with me until the very end. Do you know where you are? I tried to answer. But nothing came. Not fear. Not recognition. Not even confusion. Just blankness. They said I had been in an accident. That I was lucky to be alive. That memory loss was not uncommon, and that sometimes memories return slowly, or not at all. I nodded like a good patient. But inside, something felt deeply wrong. Because it wasn't just that I couldn't remember my life. It was that I couldn't feel it either. No warmth. No grief. No longing. Just the quiet terror of existing without a past. The call that brought me home. The first familiar voice came 2 days later. She called herself my mother. Her voice trembled when she said my name, like she was afraid I might disappear again if she said it too loudly. We want you home, she said. You'll heal better here. Home. That word echoed inside me like it was supposed to mean something. I asked where here was. There was a pause on the line. Our house, she said carefully. The one you grew up in. She spoke as if the house itself would finish the sentence for her. I agreed to go. Not because I felt safe. But because I felt nothing at all. And that was worse. The house that felt wrong. The house stood at the end of a quiet street, framed by trees that leaned inward like they were listening. It was old. Well kept. Loved, once. As soon as I stepped inside, my chest tightened. Not with recognition. With resistance. The air smelled faintly of polish and something older, like closed rooms and unanswered questions. Everyone watched me. Not openly. Not rudely. But carefully. Like people watching a storm cloud, unsure whether it would pass, or break. Do you remember this? Someone asked softly. I shook my head. The disappointment flashed across their faces before they masked it. That's when I realized something. They weren't just hoping I'd remember. They were afraid I might. Faces that expected recognition. They lined up memories for me like offerings. This was your favorite chair. You used to sit there every morning. You loved that window. Each sentence ended the same way. With expectation. When I didn't react, the room felt colder. My sister, at least, that's what they told me, smiled too much. Spoke too quickly. My father barely spoke at all. And every time I studied their faces, I felt the strangest sensation. Not familiarity. But distance. As if I was looking at people who knew me very well. and hoped I didn't know them at all. The story they all agreed on. That night, they told me what happened. The accident. A fall. A wet road. A blur of headlights. Each detail passed smoothly from one person to the next, like they'd rehearsed it together. No interruptions. No disagreements. No uncertainty. Too perfect. I noticed something else. No one mentioned where I was going. Or who I was with. Or why no police report sat on the table beside my hospital papers. When I asked, the room went quiet. You were alone, my mother said quickly. Everyone nodded. Together. A bedroom frozen in time. My bedroom waited for me at the end of the hall. The door opened easily. The room did not. It felt preserved. Untouched. Like a museum exhibit titled, Who She Used to Be. Clothes folded neatly. Books arranged carefully. A bed made too perfectly for someone who supposedly lived there until recently. Dustless. Unlived in. On the wall hung a photo frame. One photo was missing. The outline remained. The first uneasy night. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house made sounds, old houses always do, but each creak felt deliberate. Like footsteps that stopped when I listened. At some point, I realized something chilling. No one checked on me. No whispered goodnights. No gentle questions. It was as if they had done their part simply by bringing me back. As if now. They were waiting. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. And for the first time since waking up, I felt it. Not memory. But certainty. Whatever I had forgotten. Someone in this house was praying it stayed that way. Part 2. Cracks in the family story. The first lie she catches. A small detail doesn't add up, and no one can explain it. It was something so small, so ordinary, that it almost slipped past me. A photograph. I found it on the hallway shelf while dusting, my hands moving more out of habit than memory. A family picture in a simple wooden frame. Smiling faces. Familiar, yet distant. They told me I'd lost years, not everything, so I leaned closer. That's when I noticed it. The date written on the back. 5 years ago. My sister had told me the accident happened 3 years ago. My mother said 4. Everyone's story had shifted just enough to feel flexible. But dates don't bend. Ink doesn't forget. When I asked about it at dinner, forks paused midair. Oh, that, my mother said too quickly. You must be mistaken. I wasn't. They changed the subject immediately. Laughed too loudly. My father cleared his throat and asked if I wanted more rice. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. They weren't confused. They were lying. A mirror that doesn't feel like hers. She struggles to recognize the person staring back at her. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror for a long time. I knew the face looking back at me was mine, everyone said so. Same eyes. Same birthmark near the jawline. Same scar just beneath the hairline that I was told came from the accident. But something felt off. My eyes looked older than my reflection should have allowed. There was a heaviness in them, a caution I didn't remember earning. I touched the scar gently. No memory followed. No flash. No pain. Just a cold certainty settling in my chest. This body had lived a life without me. And whatever it had survived, it hadn't been gentle. The door that is always locked. One room in the house is strictly off limits. Every house has a rhythm. You start to feel it after a while. The way floorboards sigh under certain steps. The way doors usually stay open. Except one. At the end of the hallway, just past my childhood bedroom, was a door I had never seen open. Not once. I asked about it casually one afternoon. That, my father said, not looking up from his newspaper. Storage. Nothing important. But his hand tightened around the page. Later, when I walked past it alone, I noticed something else. The lock was new. Too new for a house this old. And suddenly, I knew, without memory, without proof, that whatever was behind that door was not forgotten. It was hidden. Conversations that stop when she enters. Whispers, silences, and sudden subject changes. After that, I began to notice the pauses. I'd enter a room, and voices would drop into silence like stones sinking into water. If I lingered in the hallway, I could hear murmurs, my name floating between them, fragile and sharp. But the moment I stepped closer, the house would go quiet. Too quiet. Once, I caught my sister wiping tears from her eyes before forcing a smile and asking if I wanted tea. Another time, my mother flinched when I called her Mom, as if the word itself hurt. They weren't afraid of me. They were afraid of what I might remember. A name no one says aloud. She discovers a name erased from family conversations. I found the name by accident. An old utility bill tucked inside a drawer. A single line, barely visible beneath faded ink. Elias. I didn't recognize it, but my body did. A sudden tightness in my chest. A rush of heat behind my eyes. At dinner that night, I said it out loud. Who is Elias? The room shattered. My mother dropped her glass. It cracked against the table, water spilling everywhere. My father stood up so abruptly his chair fell backward. My sister whispered, "You promised we wouldn't." Silence. Heavy. Final. No one, my father said at last, his voice cold. That name doesn't belong here. But the way his hands trembled told me everything. Names don't disappear unless someone works very hard to erase them. And whoever Elias was, he was the reason I forgot. Part 3, the house begins to speak. The dream that isn't a dream. The same scene returns night after night. Sleep no longer felt like rest. It felt like falling. Every night, the same dream pulled me under, except it didn't behave like a dream. It didn't blur at the edges or fade when I woke. It stayed sharp. Too sharp. I was standing at the end of the hallway. The locked door was open. Light spilled out from inside the room, flickering like a dying candle. And I could hear someone breathing, slow, uneven, close. I tried to step forward, but my legs wouldn't move. Then a voice whispered my name. Not gently. Not kindly. I woke up gasping, my heart hammering, the echo of that voice still crawling along my spine. And the worst part? When I checked the hallway. The door handle was warm. Scratches behind the walls. The house makes noises no one can explain. Old houses creak. Everyone knows that. But this was different. Late at night, when the house settled and the air grew heavy, I heard scratching. Not in the attic. Not under the floor. Inside the walls. Slow. Intentional. As if something was dragging its fingers along the inside of the plaster, searching. I asked my father about it the next morning. Rats, he said too quickly. This place is old. But rats don't stop when you whisper. That night, I pressed my ear to the wall. The scratching stopped. And something whispered back. A hidden box under the floorboard. She finds proof that she once tried to escape. The loose floorboard revealed itself by accident. I was pacing my room, replaying conversations, when my heel caught on it. The wood shifted slightly, exposing a thin gap. I knelt. My fingers shook as I pried it open. Inside was a small metal box, dusty and dented, like it had been buried in a hurry. My name was scratched into the lid, in my handwriting. My hands knew the latch before my mind did. Inside were photographs. Newspaper clippings. And a folded note written in ink so dark it looked almost violent. If you're reading this, it means they won. Do not trust them. Especially him. Elias tried to warn me. The room spun. I hadn't just forgotten something. I had been erased. The photo that shouldn't exist. Someone else remembers her, but not kindly. One photograph slipped from the pile and landed face up on the floor. I stopped breathing. It showed me standing in the doorway of the locked room. My face wasn't smiling. It wasn't afraid. It was furious. Behind me, reflected in the mirror inside that room, stood a man I didn't recognize. Tall. Pale. Watching. On the back of the photo was a single sentence. You should have stayed gone. I wasn't alone in this house. I never had been. The night she breaks the lock. The truth demands to be opened. That night, I didn't ask permission. I didn't wait for answers. I took the keys from the kitchen drawer while everyone slept, my hands steady despite the terror clawing at my ribs. The hallway felt longer than before. Narrower. Like the house was holding its breath. The key slid into the lock too easily. The door opened with a sound like a sigh of relief. Inside, the room was bare except for a single chair. And deep scratches carved into the walls. Names covered the plaster. Mine. Elias. And dozens of others I didn't recognize. This wasn't a storage room. It was a confession. And the house had finally decided I was ready to remember. Part 4, The Name They Buried. Elias was never a stranger. His name unlocks memories they tried to destroy. The name Elias wouldn't leave me alone. It pulsed in my head like a second heartbeat. Every time I whispered it, something inside the house seemed to shift, floorboards settling, walls sighing, shadows stretching just a little longer. I searched the family albums the next morning. Page after page of birthdays, holidays, smiling faces. And then, nothing. Years missing. Entire chapters torn out. But in one corner of a photograph from long ago, barely visible, was a reflection in a window. A young man standing beside me. His arm around my shoulder. Elias. He wasn't a stranger. He was someone they erased. The hospital bracelet. The truth is written on her body. It fell from the back of my jewelry box, yellowed with age. A hospital bracelet. My name was printed neatly on the front. On the back, another name, handwritten. Elias Moreno, emergency contact. My hands went cold. Why would his name be tied to mine? And why had my family hidden this instead of throwing it away? Suddenly, my headaches made sense. The panic attacks. The gaps. This wasn't an accident. It was a treatment. The day she tried to leave. The memory they forced her to forget. The memory came back in pieces. A suitcase by the door. My mother crying, not in fear, but in anger. My father blocking the exit. And Elias standing between us, his voice shaking as he said, "She has a right to know." That was the day I tried to leave. That was the day everything went wrong. The accident that wasn't. The official story begins to collapse. They told me I'd fallen. That I'd hit my head. That the memory loss was unfortunate but a blessing. But the newspaper clipping in the metal box told a different story. Local woman in coma after domestic incident. The article had been folded to hide one word. Incident. Not accident. And Elias's name had been blacked out with marker. The family meeting. When silence finally breaks. I confronted them at dinner. The air was thick, like the house itself was listening. "Who is Elias?" I asked. My mother dropped her fork. My father stood up too fast. No one spoke. Until my sister whispered, "You weren't supposed to remember him." That was when I knew. They hadn't just taken my memories. They'd taken my choices. What they did to protect themselves. Love twisted into control. They said they were protecting me. That Elias was dangerous. That I was unstable. That the doctors had recommended the treatment. But every justification sounded rehearsed, polished by guilt and fear. They didn't erase Elias to save me. They erased him to keep the family intact. At any cost. The house reacts to the truth. Walls remember what people forget. That night, the house groaned. Lights flickered. The scratching returned, louder, angrier. As if the walls were finally free to speak. I didn't feel afraid. I felt angry. Because the house hadn't betrayed me. My family had. Part 5, The Memory They Can't Erase. Elias didn't leave. He was taken away. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of my childhood bedroom, knees pulled to my chest, listening to the house breathe. Every creak felt intentional now. Like it was guiding me. At dawn, I went back to the locked room. The one door no one ever explained. This time, the key was already in the lock. Inside, dust coated everything like a burial shroud. A narrow bed. A desk. And on the wall, scratches. Tallies. Days. Weeks. Someone had been kept here. Someone had waited. Elias hadn't walked away. He'd been imprisoned. The tape they forgot to destroy. A voice comes back from the past. In the desk drawer, beneath old papers, I found a cassette tape labeled in my handwriting. If I forget, play this. My hands shook as I pressed play. My own voice filled the room, stronger, angrier than I remembered myself ever being. I love him. And if you're listening to this, it means they lied again. Then Elias's voice. Calm. Gentle. Afraid. They said it's temporary. Just until you come to your senses. But if they're wrong, if they take your memories, remember this, you were never sick. You were just brave. I broke down on the floor. They hadn't erased him from my past. They'd tried to erase him from me. What really happened that night? The truth finally completes itself. The memory returned all at once. The shouting. My father's hand on Elias's chest. My mother calling the doctor, not the police. Me screaming. Elias hitting the floor. Blood. And then darkness. They told the hospital I attacked him. They told the doctors I was delusional. They signed the consent forms while I lay unconscious. They chose reputation over truth. Control over love. The house makes its choice. Some places keep score. The power went out as the sun set. Doors slammed on their own. The locked room door burst open. My parents ran downstairs, faces pale, voices trembling. Something's wrong with this house, my mother whispered. I stood in the center of the living room, calm for the first time. No, I said. Something's right. The house remembered. Even when I couldn't. Confrontation at the table. The lies don't survive the light. I placed the tape recorder on the dining table. Pressed play. No one interrupted. No one could. When it ended, my father looked small. Shrunken. My sister was crying. My mother reached for me, and I stepped back. You stole my life, I said. And you called it love. They had no defense left. Only silence. The final choice. Freedom always costs something. I left that night. Not running. Walking. The house didn't stop me. It watched. And for the first time, it let me go. Outside, the air felt unreal, sharp, alive. Painful. Beautiful. I didn't know where Elias was. I didn't know if he was alive. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. They would never erase me again. what memory really is, and what it can't be taken away. Some memories live in the mind. Others live in the body. In the walls. In the truth that refuses to stay buried. They can drug you. Gaslight you. Rewrite your story. But they can't erase who you choose to become. They stole my memories to control me, but the truth waited patiently, until I was strong enough to remember it. That's our story for today. If it resonated with you, show your support by liking and subscribing to the channel. I'd love to see how far our community reaches. Drop a comment below and let me know which city you're watching from and what time it is there. I can't wait to see where all you wonderful people are tuning in from.